Welcome, age of vintage society. Rita Hayworth, the little girl from Brooklyn, exploited at the hands of her domineering father, forced to change her name and her hairline to get rid of her pesky Latiness, had the sort of beauty and verve that unite to form charisma. She's gorgeous, but so are many classic Hollywood stars. What sets her apart is the alacrity in her eyes, the persistent bounce in her step. When you see her on screen, it seems like everyone else is just sleepwalking. Today we will take a look at Rita Hayworth's life, where she is coming from, and how Margarita Cansino became Rita Hayworth. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. Rita Hayworth, Hollywood's love goddess. Rita Hayworth was one of Hollywood's biggest, most beautiful stars of the 1940s. They called her the goddess of love, but in real life, Hayworth suffered in love. Her stardom was manufactured by the Hollywood studio system of the time, and she was the first Hollywood star to marry into a royal family. But it was hardly a fairy tale. Unfortunately, she would also become the first famous person to suffer publicly from Alzheimer's disease. Who was Rita Hayworth? American film bombshell Rita Hayworth originally trained as a dancer, but she hit stardom as an actress with her appearance in The Strawberry Blonde. She is best known for her performance in Charles Vidor's Gilda. Her career ended with Ralph Nelson's The Wrath of God. Hayworth's co-star in one of her most famous movies, Gilda, was the Hollywood actor Glenn Ford. Their relationship on screen was tumultuous, though it didn't seem like that changed when the cameras stopped rolling. During a fight scene between their characters in the movie, Hayworth really did knock out two of Ford's teeth. A legendary Hollywood actress whose beauty catapulted her to international stardom in the 1940s and 1950s, Rita Hayworth was born Margarita Carmen Cansino on October 17, 1918 in New York City. She changed her last name to Hayworth early on in her acting career on the advice of her first husband and manager, Edward Judson. Hayworth hailed from show business stock. Her father, the Spanish-born Eduardo Cansino, was a dancer, and her mother, Volga, had been a Ziegfeld Follies girl. Soon after their daughter was born, they shortened her name to Rita Cansino. By the time Hayworth was 12, she was dancing professionally. Hayworth left school at just 12 years old when her father, Eduardo, reinvented her as his dance partner. He dressed her and made her up to look much older, and they started performing together as the Dancing Cansinos in Tijuana, Mexico. According to Hayworth, her father did far worse things than make her quit school and conscript her into working when she was still a child. Still a young girl, Hayworth moved with her family to Los Angeles and eventually joined her father on the stage in nightclubs both in the United States and in Mexico. It was on a stage in Aguascalientes, Mexico, that a Fox Film Company producer spotted the 16-year-old dancer and inked her to a contract. Hayworth made her film debut in 1935, still using the name Rita Cansino, with Under the Pampas Moon, which was followed by a string of other films including Dante's Inferno with Spencer Tracy, Charlie Chan in Egypt, Meet Nero Wolfe, and Human Cargo. In 1937 she married Judson, a man 22 years older than her, who would set the stage for his young wife's future stardom. On his advice, Hayworth changed her last name and dyed her hair auburn. Judson worked the phones and managed to get Hayworth plenty of press in newspapers and magazines, and eventually helped her get a 7-year contract with Columbia Pictures. After a few disappointing roles in several mediocre films, Hayworth landed an important role as an unfaithful wife opposite Cary Grant in Only Angels Have Wings. Critical praise came Hayworth's way, as did more movie offers. Just 2 years after the relatively unknown actress shared the screen with Grant, Hayworth was a star herself. Her stunning, sensual looks greatly helped, and that year Life magazine writer Winthrop Sargent nicknamed Hayworth the Great American Love Goddess. Let's stop for a minute and just think about it. How interesting that body transformation was so present in Hollywood as early as the 1940s. Is it really worth transforming so much for success? Do not hesitate to share your opinions in the comment section. How Margarita Cansino became Rita Hayworth. She'd undergone a full glamour makeover by the studio. Hayworth navigated identity, ethnicity and transformation throughout her career. By the time Margarita Cansino made it big, she'd transformed. After being discovered in a Mexican nightclub, she went on to become one of the 1940s most famous stars, and a pin-up icon for World War II soldiers. To reach this status, she changed her name and her appearance in many ways that seemed to obscure her Latina roots, but the story is more complicated than that. Although modern viewers might be surprised to hear that Rita Hayworth was Hispanic, her heritage was common knowledge during the years of her stardom. Transformation was always a part of Hayworth's appeal. In the process of becoming Rita Hayworth, Margarita Carmen Cansino went through a number of transformations, from her name to a makeover that eliminated most traces of her ethnicity. But studios highlighted the diets, the painful treatments to change her hairline, and the name change. Hayworth was her Irish-American mother's maiden name as evidence of her value. Hayworth's ethnicity was a big part of the reason behind her stardom. Even though it appears that she turned away from it, her identity gave her a path to stardom because it allowed her to mix wholesomeness and sex appeal. This mix allowed her to earn the title of American Love Goddess. Hayworth really knew how to pick 'em. For a brief time she was married to a film producer named James Hill. While at dinner with Charlton Heston, Hill was so viciously cruel to Hayworth that Heston and his wife stood up and left. In his autobiography, Heston wrote that he always regretted walking away from Hayworth in her time of need. Men idolised Hayworth as her star rose higher in Hollywood during the 1940s. One of her more notorious lovers of this time was the mysterious, rich and powerful Howard Hughes. After all the pain brought on Hayworth by Judson, we'd expect Hayworth to never want to see him again. Instead, she fell in a twisted kind of love. Hayworth eloped with Judson even though he was a whopping 22 years older than Hayworth. But that's not the worst part. Judson frequently pressured Hayworth into becoming intimate with studio executives to advance her career. When Hayworth was 23 years old, she starred in the movie Blood and Sand. The film was successful, crowning Hayworth as a new young starlet. Gaining a degree of confidence and maturity, Hayworth decided to walk out on first husband Edward Judson. He threatened to disfigure her face if she left him, but Hayworth brought back up with her, a tough guy actor named Victor Mature, who was her lover at that time. After Hayworth left her cruel first husband, Edward Judson, he came up with a disturbing plan for revenge. He demanded her whole assets before he would grant her wish for a divorce. As Hayworth's second husband, the famous director Orson Welles said later in Hayworth's defence, Rita didn't just have her father to contend with, she also had that first husband. They married in 1943, but within a year their love affair ended for a tragic reason. Welles realised that Hayworth wasn't the love goddess she portrayed in films. Instead, she was an insecure, abuse-scarred woman who would never heal from her awful past. Hayworth's third marriage brought her the closest to a fairy tale. Prince Ali Khan, as he was known, was a fabulously rich playboy and adventurer whose family owned a pricey stable of racehorses. Khan had a private movie theatre in his palatial residence on the Riviera, and his favourite film in 1948 was Gilda, starring Rita Hayworth. After watching the film numerous times, Khan was hooked. There was just one problem. He was still legally married to his first wife, but that was a trifling matter to the prince. Hayworth married Khan in 1949 and gave birth to their daughter, Princess Yasmin Aga Khan, in December of that year. The marriage barely lasted until 1953. Although Khan professed to be deeply in love, his actions did not match his words. He was never faithful and may have had an affair with Hayworth's rival, Joan Fontaine. On top of this, Hayworth's temper tantrums, caused by their unstable home life and the residue of Hayworth's childhood trauma, were epic. Hayworth married 2 more times in her life, but never successfully or for long. Was she related to Ginger Rogers? For years, moviegoers wondered if the rumour was true. Was Rita Hayworth truly related to fellow Hollywood icon Ginger Rogers? In a shocking twist, the answer is yes. Here's the breakdown. Hayworth's mother's brother was married to Rogers' mother's sister. While this means that the 2 stars aren't related by blood, just connected through marriage, the 2 most famous redheads are still cousins. Fred Astaire was one of the greatest dancers of Hollywood's golden age of musicals. He was often paired up with Ginger Rogers, Hayworth's so-called cousin by marriage. But when he was cajoled into it, he secretly confessed that his favourite dance partner was Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth was one of the most famous early Latinas in Hollywood. To enter showbiz, she shook off her heritage and even changed her name to disguise her Hispanic roots. Rita was a legend in her time and a target of the press. As a talented young actress, Hayworth forever made a place for herself in the annals of Hollywood.